We are live, punctual like a snail. Good evening, everybody. This is another one of, you know what? We've gotten to the point now where we've had so many live streams that I never thought we would be having a year ago that I'm going to stop saying it, because now every live stream, I can safely say I never would have thought having had a year ago. Ryan Kinel, or Kinel, I'm going to ask him if it's Kinel or Kinel or Kinel. I'm going to ask him how he pronounced the last name, but I believe it's Kinel. Originally from Geeks and Gamers, has his own YouTube channel where he, from what the interwebs say, criticizes SJW and gaming and entertainment. I'm going to start this stream when Ryan comes in with some amazingly hilarious thread that I found on Reddit. But while everyone trickles in and while everyone settles down for what's undoubtedly going to be a phenomenally entertaining, educational, insightful live stream, I forget what the first half of that sentence was. While we do that, I'm going to give these standard disclaimers, which I typically don't need to do on the sidebars, just because of the nature of the sidebar. But let's start with disclaimer number one. No, let's start with announcement number one. We are also simultaneously streaming on Rumble. So going forward now, and it's been the case for a while, we are simultaneously streaming on Rumble. And if there's a problem, someone let me know, because one time we had a glitch, whatever. Rumble itself, incidentally, Chris Pavlovsky, the CEO of Rumble, just tweeted out some big news that Rumble has some investors and has found new financing to build basically its own, I don't want to say cloud because I don't want to use terms improperly and illustrate my tech ignorance. They are building infrastructure to be less reliant on the likes of Amazon Web Services and to give them more freedom and to be held less under the proverbial sword of Damocles of big tech and what they can do. So Rumble, support us there, follow us there, go check it out. They don't yet have live stream commenting available that I know of. They're working on it. And they're also working on live stream tipping, much like with the super chats, which is the perfect segue into the super chats. I should be able to get to all of them, but typically I don't read all of them because I can't get to all of them, or it's not on point and I don't want to interrupt the conversation. But thank you in advance for all the super chats. But if you're going to be miffed if I do not read or address your super chat, don't give it. I don't like people feeling miffed. YouTube takes 30% of all super chats, which some people find outrageous and don't want to support that machine. If you want to support the channel or Robert and I in our endeavors, there's Patreon, Subscribe Star, but more important than all of that, Viva, barneslaw.locals.com. Robert does it so much better than I do. So you can support us there if you want to and be part of the locals community, which gets exclusive content, has exclusive community discussions. Is beautiful. I think that's it. No legal advice, but don't expect any legal advice in this stream in any event. So let's see. We look like we're all in here. Let me see. I missed one super chat already. Let me just get down to it. Get down to the super chat right here. Boo-yakasha. Jessica Cora says, every time you go live, I have to restart YouTube, or it just keeps saying waiting for user to go live. I will not immediately reflexively go to theories. I've been getting a lot of warnings about glitches, people saying that the like button is not liking when they click it. They have to click it 3 times. People being unsubbed. YouTube has had now a glitch in terms of real-time analytics, whatever. Doesn't matter. It's good. It's good enough. And not to say it's good enough as if to abandon the expectation of being better. Can't complain. It's things are working very well, even though they're not, YouTube has its issues. Justin Trudeau been raising money. Who's filing lawsuits? This will definitely not be on the subject for tonight. A249644105. But thank you for the super chat in pounds or euros. That's pounds. That's pounds. Government, man. Okay. So without further ado, and by the way, everyone thinks that that's without further ado. It's actually without further adieu. Or maybe it's not. Who knows? I don't know. I see Robert. I see Ryan. I'm going to bring in Robert because this way I can test if everything's working. Robert, how you doing?
Hey, is it working?
It's working. We're good. And now, bringing in Ryan Kinel. And I'm going to just frame. There we go. How beautiful is that?
Looks good. And you said it right. Ryan Kinel.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. If I were a kid, I know how I would make fun of. I go through making fun of people's last names just reflexively from childhood. And
so you're a bully. That's what you're saying. You're a bully. Is that what you're saying?
or I was a victim and I've been traumatized. I was neither a victim nor a bully. Ryan, so first of all, thank you for doing this. This is going to be phenomenal for everyone out there. Before we dive into your childhood trauma experiences, like we always do, for longer than some people in the chat like, for people who have never heard of you, never seen you before, the elevator pitch, and let's get into it.
All right, well, what's going on, guys? I am Ryan Kinel from RK Outpost and Geeks and Gamers. Started my YouTube channel coming up on 2 years ago, and I've been a part of Geeks and Gamers the entire time. I talk about pop culture, movies, gaming, comic books, and at this point in time, I think kind of everything is going towards this just societal movement we have to silence people, especially with other opinions. So I talk a lot about cancel culture and freedom of expression, those types of things. So I am also on locals.com, as well as Geeks and Gamers is on Locals, something that you guys have been promoting heavily, and you guys have an awesome community over there. We're growing ours as well, and I am just happy to be here.
I've actually got to share this. This is the most amazing thing about the aggregate knowledge of the internet and the unique intelligence of our community on Locals. I posted a picture that someone had sent me of what they thought was an individual carrying a firearm on the street, and it caused a bit of panic from the people who sent it to me. And so I said, look, I don't know. I know nothing about identifying these things. I posted it to the community, and within a matter of minutes, everyone's like, dude, that's not what you think it is. That looks like a DJI Osmo gimbal that the person is carrying in such a way to look like. And I was like, holy cows, they're 100% right. And I zoomed in, identified like the logo marks. Amazing. So we do have a great community. Ryan, let's start from the beginning. Questions I always ask. How many siblings do you have? Family life? Where are you from? And what was your childhood like?
Yeah, I know that's stuff that I literally never talk about. So it's going to be interesting. So I have one brother who's younger. I am the older brother. I think if anyone's watched me enough, they might understand that I do have that kind of older brother mentality a little bit. But I grew up in Northwest Indiana. Both my parents were teachers. And I just basic, average, middle class dude, I guess. Nothing too strange. My family was really into sports. We about an hour outside of Chicago. So Bears, Bulls, Cubs, F the White Sox. Don't care about the White Sox. I hope they lose every single game, 0-62. But other than that, big Chicago sports guy. And I don't have anything to complain about. I had a great childhood, family who loved me. No trauma, no traumatizing experiences. Despite what the internet may lead you to believe, I'm not currently living in my mother's basement. I'm out in California. And there's a lot of rumors out there. There's a lot of rumors out there on Reddit, on the interwebs, like you said, Frey, but they're inaccurate about that. I'm not in my mother's basement. I see Drunk 3PO in the chat as well. We did go at In-N-Out, and In-N-Out is extremely overrated. That's what I'll say. I don't know what Robert thinks about that, but that's just always been my opinion.
Now, how close to Gary in Northwest Indiana?
Pretty close. Like I was born in Valparaiso, so probably 20 minutes, but 20 minutes on a highway, so it's like 30 miles away. So not in bullet range, of Gary, Indiana, but fairly close.
Basketball fan in terms of either Indiana or Notre Dame or any of that?
Purdue Boilermaker.
All right, of course. Okay, yeah.
Back
so
in
Glenn
the
Robinson fan, the big dog.
Well, big dog can eat. I love Glenn Robinson. He was a little bit before I really started getting into it. I really got into it the later end of the Gene Katie era. But when guys like Brian Cardinal, like tough-nosed dudes that had virtually no skill, like Brian Cardinal, were out there playing for Purdue. And I got to see Drew Brees play football there, which was really cool. And I do indeed have a messy room. So
now, Ryan, I want to get into, before we get into the Geeks and Gamers, RK, if I may ask, did you go to university in terms of like how you actually got to where you go? What did you study to get to where you are now?
Gotcha. So I went to 1 year of college. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Coming out of college, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I was actually studying music. I was studying to be a music education major because I was really into music and I was really into that in high school. Wasn't really something I was necessarily passionate about, and I quickly found that out because I just didn't care. I didn't put a lot of effort into classes, and so I kind of took another year off to kind of rethink what I wanted to do. And I don't really talk about what I do for my day job. Obviously, that's why I'm out here in California, is for my job. But it's essentially, to put it kind of in a still mysterious way, has to do with energy production and training people on different simulators to make sure that energy production is done in a safe way. And so I went to basically a 2-year school for that, and got basically a degree crammed down my throat. I wouldn't quite call it a trade school, but it was pretty close because it was just focused on the things I needed to know. And that's what I've been doing for the past 10, 11 years.
How long have you lived in California?
Too long, but about 4 years. I'm coming up on 4 years, and I am soon to make my Cal exit, going to Texas.
Whereabouts in Texas?
San Antonio area. So I know you guys had Nerdrotic on here not too long ago. I think we're probably going to end up in similar places. No, it's not for me to go live in his basement. That's not the plan. But I think we are going to probably similar locations, at least within driving distance. So.
Is it because of how crazy California got politically?
That's part of it. The only reason I was really ever out here was for my job. And since that opportunity is coming to an end, I'm looking to transition into this new opportunity in Texas, which works out really well. And I never had long-term plans to stay here. It was for, I got a good opportunity with good money and a good job that I could be really flexible about my hours. And that's what drew me here. The weather's great. It's way too freaking expensive, and the people are literally insane. Other than that, great place, though.
Well, this was my question, actually, as to whether or not you had any fears of losing your job or getting into trouble, canceled with your job as a result of what you say and do on YouTube. Your job is coming to an end, and you're going to be moving into another one, or going to be relying on this full-time coming soon?
I'm not at a place where right now I don't think I can do that. I've got my channel, like you said. I'm part of Geeks and Gamers. I also help run Sports Wars, which is a part of Geeks and Gamers. We got so many things going on. I think when people hear the words Geeks and Gamers, they very much just think about, okay, so geek and nerd stuff and gaming stuff. But when it comes to what we're actually doing, we have a theme park channel. We have a sports channel that just recently hit 100,000 subscribers that we're going to the moon on that thing. I'm really proud of what we built there. We're getting started with an outdoors channel. It's going to be focused on hunting and fishing and, deep sea diving, things like that. So we've really got our hands in a lot of different areas, but we're continuing to grow. My channel, I've got my channel. It's closing on 70,000. I've got a few other channels that are either monetized or close to being there. But I'm just not at the point where I'd feel comfortable saying, all right, let's take the risk on just this. But I think 1 or 2 more years, that's my plan. My plan would be in 12 to 24 months to be completely independent, working for myself, along with Geeks and Gamers, obviously, but not having a traditional job. But right now, got to be safe. So
I need to remind you afterwards, but send me all the links, and those will go in the pinned comments so people can find your other links there.
Absolutely.
Ryan, I'm going to start. Robert, this is going to give you a good laugh. It's going to be a good segue into what we're going to discuss tonight. I was Googling. First, I got an email from someone. It was either a message or an email. It said, ask Ryan what he thinks about women. Because I knew that, everyone, I get the messages when we have someone who's controversial. Ryan, I had no idea that you would be remotely controversial. And I'm not sure that label is entirely appropriate, but someone said, ask what he thinks about women. I started looking on the internet to see what bad stuff I could find. I came across a thread on Reddit, or what do they call them? It was a thread on Reddit. And it was from, it doesn't matter who it's from. It says Geeks and Gamers and the toxic fandom. Robert, when we talk about confession through projection, wait until I'm going to read this out loud. I don't want to share the screen because I can't find it anyhow. Quote, so I just stumbled on a video from this YouTube channel called Geeks and Gamers. It's a 5-minute toxic rant where the host plays the short trailer we got off the High Republic era today and spends the entire time calling it, quote, complete garbage and, quote, SJW. Maybe I'm out of touch, but what the FUCK is this? He hasn't read any of the material, claims that they're all new authors to the canon. They're not. And then discredits the whole project as some political stunt, I guess because Kathleen Kennedy introduces the trailer. Normally, I wouldn't have an issue with someone on the internet being a toxic fool, except for the fact that the video has 55,000 views and way more likes than dislikes. There's also a disconcerting amount of dislikes on the actual High Republic live stream video. And again, I'm not sure why. What am I not understanding here? I'm super pumped about the High Republic, but good Lord, am I bummed that so much of the fan base seems to be really bad apples. comment. Well,
Yeah, so like that's very Reddit tier, right? That would be a Reddit tier Reddit thread where someone says, "Wow, I really disagree with this opinion. Why do so many people agree with it? And also this thing that I want him to like, why does everyone hate it so much?" Well, maybe you're the outlier if that were the case. And I do remember that. I'm pretty sure that was Jeremy, a Jeremy video when the High Republic was introduced, and such a focus was put on, well, diversity, representation, equality, all of these things that they very much heavily promoted in the trailer and in the lead up to the High Republic. Some people see that for what it is, an indication that you're putting that ahead of your story, and some people are still clueless sheep. Which I think more people are waking up to this realization every day. But yeah, if you Google Geeks and Gamers, if you Google RK Outpost, if you do a Reddit search, a lot of misinformed people, but I guess that shouldn't really be surprising.
How did you get into this space originally? In other words, what led you to start your own channel and think about doing commentary?
Yeah, that's actually a funny story. After The Force Awakens, I despised that movie. I did not like that movie. I know, like, for a lot of people, they got caught up in the hype and everything. I was already upset because you can see all these Star Wars books that I have right next to me. This is the Star Wars Expanded Universe. These are stories that have been out there, over 100 novels, thousands of comic books, tons of video games, all these things. It was one cohesive story that when Disney bought Star Wars, they decided, you know what? We're not going to utilize any of those stories. We're going to throw it in the trash for creative freedoms. And then we just get a J.J. Abrams rehash of A New Hope with no creativity at all. We just see the rest of the Disney canon cherry picking different good stories and trying to mash them together with no soul. So I was already pretty upset about that. Went into Force Awakens, despised it. And in the ramp up to The Last Jedi, I saw that trailer. I was like, who wants this? This looks absolutely miserable. So I started searching around YouTube for people and, the anticipation of The Last Jedi. I started to find a couple channels, especially after The Last Jedi. So, I got involved in this community. People like Jeremy, people like, EVS, people like World Class Bullshitters, all these people that were talking about that at the time. And I started listening. I wasn't really too active in chats, but I was just consuming a lot of YouTube content. Just like I'm sure a lot of you guys here come here every single week. Every single stream you do, you always see them there. That was me. I just wasn't necessarily commenting. And then Gary and Jeremy, so Gary from Nerdrotic and Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers, did a meetup here at San Diego for Comic-Con. And I was like, you know what? I'll go say hi to them. And it was like a 2-day thing where we went out to a little bar and just hung out for a while. And for me, if I can be in a room with somebody, you may love me, you may absolutely despise me, but you're damn sure going to know I'm there and pay attention to me. That's just kind of how I am. So evidently, I kind of did that there. We were just talking about sports. We were talking about Star Wars, comics, everything. And at one point, Gary came up to me and he's like, "Hey, do you think about starting a YouTube channel?" I'm like, "Not at all." And he's like, "You should. You got some good ideas. You got presence, all those things." I was like, "That's interesting." Then an hour later, Jeremy comes up to me and says the exact same thing and says, "I really think that you could do something on YouTube. And if you do, I want to work with you at Geeks and Gamers." And I was like, that was mind blowing to me because it's like Geeks and Gamers, who I watch, he wants me to join the team, but I've literally never done anything. And yeah, I thought about it for a couple days, and next thing you know, I'm buying a webcam and a microphone and doing my own thing. So it was really kind of a chance meeting that really inspired me to do it. And now it's basically all of my spare time is spent, continuing to build what we have here.
So how long have you been doing it?
I started, my first video was, I think, August 1st of 2019. So coming up on 2 years.
Was that the comic arcade?
It was essentially the same time. I put, I think, one video on my channel, and then I did a video for Geeks and Gamers. So it was basically at the same time. So I would be nowhere without Jeremy, without Geeks and Gamers. And so it's been awesome to, have that little boost initially, and at the same time have my channel be able to take off, get in the algorithm myself, and all the stuff that we've been able to do. And then on the other side of things, me being able to, help out Jeremy and put a focus on Sports Wars specifically, growing that thing massively has been huge. Absolutely huge.
Now, were you one of those people that went to Comic-Con all the time, or was that a one-off?
No, it was a one-off. I didn't even go inside. I didn't pay to go there. There's a lot of stuff to do walking around the outside and everything. Of course, this was back when, human beings thought it was okay to be outside within 6 feet of each other, before Dictator Newsom tries to tell them different. But yeah, so I just went and hung out, but it was really at a bar, kind of in San Diego. I think it may be in Pacific Beach area, somewhere around there, that they did the meetup. And that's where everybody came after the day was over.
So you start your channel at the same time as Geeks and Gamers. The content is somewhat different. Geeks and Gamers focuses on, Geeks and Gamers, I don't really watch it all that much at all, but focuses on games, and you basically focus on reviewing movies and the arts.
Not really. I would say that, Geeks and Gamers was around long before I was, it got very relevant, and, there's kind of been a couple of different iterations. We do gaming content, sometimes on the main channel, sometimes on a separate, smaller one. It's called Gaming with Geeks. We do movie stuff. We do movie news. There's movie reviews on Geeks and Gamers. I think recently, like you guys know, you kind of find topics that resonate with your audience, and that you feel passionate about, and then you continue to push towards those things that, everybody seems to like and that you're passionate about. So, lately, I think the Star Wars thing was what really took Geeks and Gamers to the next level. The reaction to The Last Jedi, to identity politics invading these spaces, and the death of entertainment as a whole. And that kind of branched out to things like, oh, well, then you had Marvel and the identity politics that crept into Marvel. You have little sparks here and there, like Naughty Dog. That was a huge thing for us. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but The Last of Us Part 2 and Sony and Naughty Dog false copyright striking channels that were critical of them. I was one of those channels. I got 2 copyright strikes. So I was on the verge of being eliminated. Geeks and Gamers got a copyright strike. We got another channel that got a copyright strike. So, then even though we hadn't really planned on it, we started this fight against this corporation that's trying to silence people for speaking out. And, that was then the center of some of our content for a while. So at this point, we're kind of going through a transition period because, let's face it, Star Wars is dead. No one cares about Star Wars. Gina Carano's not there. I think a lot of people don't care about it. And so we're just we're making content about kind of anything that seems relevant, whether that's movie news, gaming news, basically anything. And then we've got these niche things. Like I said, we're starting the outdoors channel. We're doing sports, gaming heavy on the Gaming with Geeks. So we try to diversify and, really get our tentacles in everything.
When did you first become sort of alert to the sort of politicization of popular culture in general, but in the science fiction and gaming space and film space particularly?
I think that the one thing that everyone kind of points to is Ghostbusters 2016 as like this zeitgeist, right? Of like, this is where it all went wrong. And I think if you had been looking for it before, I think you could have seen it. Gamergate, I don't think a lot of people were very aware outside of gaming what was going on there, but you could see that was a problem with games journalism, but also exposed some of the problems in the gaming industry as far as this push for kind of just identity politics above all else. People getting good deals because of the gender or who they wanted to sleep with at the time. And for, I think, everyone in general, it was really impossible to miss after 2016. I think it has a lot to do with the election of Donald Trump. And I think a lot of people in the entertainment industry had been pushed before that, for sure. But after that happened, you have all these blue check marks. You have all these Hollywood elites who felt like it was their responsibility. It was their responsibility to educate everyone and to make sure that, we've been pushing our narrative before, but we got to double down on this because this should not have happened. How could Hillary have lost? And that's where I don't think that anybody can really deny what's going on. You literally have these quotas that they have to meet to be able to be eligible for an award now. You have a quota. You must have this many Black people, must have this many gay people. How offensive should that be to all these people that are going in for these roles, knowing that, well, they got to have a token Black gay guy for this to be eligible for an Oscar award. And it is so clearly affecting the storytelling because now the focus is on these things, the color of your skin, who you like to sleep with, and what you believe in, I suppose, more than what story do we want to tell.
Well, yeah, before critical race theory was in schools or businesses, variations of it were in culture and critical theory in general. But one of the other things you mentioned was another attribute of all this is bad writing, unentertaining writing, and the obsession with destroying a canon, with probably the holy canon of the science fiction and sort of that world being Star Wars. How much have you seen that just sort of spread throughout the entire industry of that space in terms of this almost revolutionary? In order to understand it, you have to understand sort of political culture and critical theory in order to understand what's happening and how it's going to happen. When did you start going on that track?
I don't know if I can tell you when, but I think when I started really seeing this stuff like creep into entertainment, then I started looking at YouTube and started seeing people making videos. Some of them I agree with, some of them I didn't, but you could definitely see all these different areas like comics. I had bought comics for a long time. I had never, I don't say never, for the majority of my life until maybe like 2014 or 15, I hadn't been a guy who went out and bought comics every single day. I traditionally collected, I had the collections, right? I had the omnibuses, things like that. But when I started doing that, I started seeing some of these characters. It seems like they were just being either emasculated or gender swapped for no reason. And it seems like today, the people that get into these fields, one, they don't have a love or a passion for what this thing is. In fact, they want to change it into something else. They don't love comic books. They don't love Batman. They don't love Superman. They like whatever their belief system is, and they want to push that into whatever they are writing. It's like, instead of creating these stories that are what you're saying, exactly what you want to put out there, someone with your values that looks like you and all these things, instead of creating those stories and trying to market those, they weren't successful. So now what they go to do is they take a traditional property and they undercut it. They change it to be what they want it to be because they know that's the only way they can get eyes on it. We can only do this if we use Captain America, a property that people know and they love. And then we turn Red Skull into Jordan Peterson to try to like put some little narrative into comic books. To me, that's what it's all about. It's these people that are talentless hacks who got into the industry either because maybe they were a diversity hire, maybe something like that. They get into this industry when they're unqualified, and all they want to do is push their ideology. It doesn't matter how many people they drive away. Profits don't matter to some of these people because they're not at the top. They're not getting paid much anyway. What matters to them is pushing their ideology, and that is destroying all forms of entertainment. That's why how many people we got? 2,000 people right now watching. That's why you guys have thousands of people watching every time you do this. People could be streaming Netflix. They could be, watching cable. They could be reading these books. Instead, they're here listening to all of us because this is starting to replace all these traditional forms of entertainment that have been bastardized.
This is what's amazing is that, and it shows the lack of self-awareness. I would use the term SJW, levels of awareness, just to quote Sargon, but you have them putting out products that people don't like. And when people like you, Ryan, who is a white, I presume, a white male, when you come out and poop on it, and instead of addressing the substance of what you're saying, they go after you for being anti-SJW. They go after you for criticizing women when you are in fact criticizing a woman, depending on the context. And I'm thinking of Anita Sarkeesian in one case. They go after you as an individual because of who you are, generalize about the people or the person who you are attacking, and then go take to Reddit to say, I don't understand why so many people agree with him. There must be something wrong with all of them, as opposed to there might be something wrong with us. And it's literally Skinner sitting there saying, it's the children that are out of touch, not me. And it's an amazing phenomenon to watch. People don't understand why you're popular, and they think it has to be a problem with the people who agree with you and not a problem with themselves. You were following Gamergate closely at the time, I imagine, or did you get into that afterwards?
I got into it a little bit later. I was vaguely aware of it, but I was not really too much into like internet culture at the time. I would say it was kind of in the aftermath of the impetus of Gamergate that I really started, digging into it and seeing what happened and, all the things that went around it. And you're 100% right. Often these criticisms don't come down to, oh, well, I disagree with what he says about this because I feel differently about this movie, about that. No, it's, well, that guy's a sexist. You can't take anything he says seriously. That person's a racist. That person's a transphobe. When they have no evidence, no proof, nothing like this. But instead, that's the only thing they had to try to discredit your argument, is because they can't argue with you. So instead, they try to discredit the person so that nothing they say is valid. And that's a dangerous place in society, especially in the era of you're going to get a job and someone Googles your name. You know what I mean? What pops up? Those things are starting to come into play for people. People are starting to not get jobs because of lies that have been spread about them over the internet. Because one person and one tweet that takes off is an absolute disgusting lie. And once it's out there, it's out there. And that's something that as a culture, I think everybody, like whether you're on the right or whether you're on the left, the cancel culture that has infested everyone. It doesn't matter who's doing it to who. I've seen people that are on the right, very much advocate the cancellation of a person on the left. I think it's usually the other way around, but I've seen it happen though. Some people become what they claim to be against just because they've been in this fight for so long.
They've stared into the abyss so long, they have become the monster they're fighting.
Exactly.
To the super chat question about how much Kathleen Kennedy has cost Star Wars. I mean, some of that we won't know for some time, but my estimate, I think when I last looked at it was something like 10 billion. But what's your sense? I mean, because you have what should have been the amount of box office revenues, but even more impactful really is what should have been the legacy that it's, well, you also have the merchandising and everything else, but more impactful was the legacy of the brand. That if you look at where it was going compared to where it has now gone, I mean, and then you look at how much they spent to buy it in the first place.
Yes.
My estimate was that it was going to cost them double or triple what it cost them to buy it in the first place. But what's your take?
I think it's tough to put a number on it specifically, but you can look at when you invest $4 billion in a property, you're not okay with just getting your money back. Because as Disney, what if you would put that $4 billion into something else, something that would have an average return? That's what you're really looking at when you're one of these corporations. And so if you're just making your money back, that is a failed investment. And that's why you can look at things and say Force Awakens made $2 billion. Rise of Skywalker just barely cracked $1 billion. Did it make money? Yeah, it made money. It was still a massive, massive disappointment and did overall damage to the legacy because no one's asking for stories after that. Think of the reason that all these books were written behind me is because after Episode 6, after Return of the Jedi ended, people wanted to know what happened. People wanted to know what happened to Luke, what happened to Han, what happened to Leia, what would happen to the Jedi if they'd be rebuilt. People had all these questions because they cared so deeply about those characters. Nobody gives a shit about any of these sequel trilogy characters. Bottom line, there's no demand for a Rey series. There's no demand to know what's going on with Finn, what's going on with Poe. No one's talking about that. That's the damage we're really talking about, like you said, to the IP, because there's very little that people get excited about. You might have these animated series like The Bad Batch, well received by the people that watch it. That's not getting the same kind of eyes that these live action shows like The Mandalorian have. Now that they've thrown away one of their most popular characters in Gina Carano, I think a lot of fans are going to be disengaged with that. So it's a mess. Star Wars is, if we thought it was in bad shape after The Last Jedi with all the backlash, people were still talking about it. Now, not a lot of people are talking about it, even though it's in a worse state than maybe ever, because a lot of people have grown, they have apathy for it now, which is the worst possible thing. You'd rather have people mad about it than apathetic.
And it's the amazing thing. It's like what made Howard Stern so popular at the time was that he was both loved and vehemently detested, but apathetic would tune people out quicker than outright hatred. And it's like, people are not even, it's true. I mean, I was never into Star Wars. Everybody knows this. Still not. But I see that nobody's talking about it because it has just left such a, call it a bitter aftertaste, but it's tuned people out. And that is worse than being hated, is being ignored to some extent.
And it's this, they wanted to, Kathleen Kennedy admitted it as much when they were talking about Galaxy's Edge. They wanted this new fan base. And so often that's what the people at the top are doing. They're in search of this Twitter fan base, right? That doesn't actually care about your product. But you want them to come in and care about your product and buy these things. One, a lot of these people don't have any buying power. They don't have any capital. So probably not a good idea to invest in them, as opposed to the 45, 50-year-old white guy with a family, who's been loving Star Wars all his life. No, let's forget about him. We want to push the old people out. We want to bring in our new fan base. We want it to be diverse and representative of everyone. Spoiler alert, people of all shapes, sizes, colors, genders. A lot of people like Star Wars. It was already this thing that you wanted it to be. You didn't need to try to change it. People would have naturally come to it. But instead, they decided to, let the past die, kill it if you have to, and move on to something. We're seeing that everywhere. We're seeing it with Marvel and the MCU right now. This next phase of Marvel is going to be full of that. And I think a lot of people are going to be really disappointed.
Yes, the MCU, as you all call it. The in the same context, you mentioned the people, getting the blowback of simply making public commentary by being called, toxic fandom, personal smears, accusations of every prejudice known to man. But the other thing you mentioned I wanted to dig into a little bit more is the misuse and abuse of copyright strikes by corporations, by people that dislike your content. Could you describe experiencing that and how you guys fought back?
Yeah, I think that if anyone's been on YouTube for any length of time, they've probably had some copyright issue. Whether that's because you watch a portion of a trailer or something on a live stream, and next thing you know, you get a copyright claim. You first see it, you don't really understand why. So you do need to educate yourself on fair use and how to combat it, because some of these companies, Warner Brothers, for instance, Warner Brothers has a very strict, like, AI, basically. At least that's how I see it. They claim everything almost automatically.
It is. It's algorithmic. They crawl the internet. They go by audio. They go by text, speech to text recognition. They read the lyrics. They'll get it. Yeah,
but the okay thing about Warner Brothers is that if you file a counter, it almost immediately gets dropped. They're also very good about dropping them. Not all companies are like that. But it's a tool that has been abused on YouTube so often from people that just want to silence dissent. That is where it's a big problem. And for me, when I got 2 copyright strikes from Naughty Dog for talking about leaks, for those of you that don't understand, and I know you probably have a lot in the audience who don't really know anything about The Last of Us Part 2, it was it's a sequel to a very, very, revered game in a way. For a lot of people, it was their kind of game of the generation. And it was a sequel, highly anticipated, tons of pre-orders. And there was this idea that it was going to be a story about the same 2 characters from the first game. All the trailers showed that, all the trailers indicated that. And then in fact, some game footage leaked out there. And it turns out that one of those people, beloved, the male father figure, in fact, gets killed in the first 2 hours of the game by this detestable enemy. And then you have to play as that enemy for the rest of the game. So it's not this story that they led everyone to believe. So when that leaked out there, it was supposed to be this big twist that everyone found. They marketed it so that people would buy it because they knew that if this was the game they were getting, they wouldn't have bought it. And when that leaked out, we talked about it. It was like the Last Jedi of gaming, because that's really what it felt like. They're just taking this character and destroying him. They had to make really stupid decisions. They made it seem like he should have been hated and he was the villain all the time. And we talked about it. There was massive blowback. Everyone was talking about this. And what Sony, Naughty Dog, and their third-party company did was copyright strike. You talked about that. You didn't even talk about the specifics. You talked about all the backlash, and you put Naughty Dog leaks in the title. Boom, copyright strike. To a big corporation, that might seem like you're just trying to do damage control. But for us, that's our channel. Like, that is, like, for Geeks and Gamers. Imagine Jeremy spending years building this thing only to have it be false copyright struck by Sony, effectively, and could be wiped out of existence if he had done too many videos on it.
And just so everybody appreciates like the difference, you have a claimed video, which if it contains copyrighted material, they can claim it. You lose monetization, but it stays up, it runs ads, and the copyright owner collects the money. There's a whole industry for that type of copyright trolling on YouTube. The weaponizing or the politicizing of the copyright strike is, no, I don't even want the ad revenue. I want that channel punished, and they give you a strike. First strike comes with, I think, a 2-week ban on uploading. Second strike, if it's within 90 days of the first strike, a longer penalty. Third strike, boom, you're gone. And you have hard strikes, which never go away. So, you have your malicious trolling for financial gain, but then you have your vindictive trolling for narrative control, political gain, which is what you're talking about now, Ryan.
Yeah, 100%. That's what this was. And they even admitted it. Neil Druckmann, who's now the co-president of Naughty Dog, I believe, told this story about how all the leaks were out there. And we were, on the phone trying to get all these different videos taken down. He's admitted as much. And so we made a big stink about that, because not only was the game itself, like what they had done was like very offensive to a lot of people who cared about that. It ruined the game for a lot of people. It was incredibly divisive, but then it was the additional tactics of striking those videos. And I'll be honest, if they hadn't struck us, we might have made a couple more videos about it. And then, whatever, we wait till the release of this game. But then by silencing your critics, by making it very clear that you don't want anybody to talk about it, it was the Streisand effect, 100%. Then everyone started talking about it. Everyone started talking about these YouTubers. Oh, there you go. Yeah. These YouTubers.
I think I misspelled her name, though, so forgive my fingers.
All these YouTubers that we're talking about, all these other YouTubers that had gotten struck. And it damaged Naughty Dog's reputation in a massive way. It led us to continue making videos about this for months. And, luckily for us, they were really stupid about it. So we all put in copyright counters. Basically, these are our reasons why we don't think it should have been a strike. We are ready to take you to court if you decide that you want to. And of course, they never responded officially. They let the 10 business days expire and our strikes were lifted. And then we got to tell everybody that Sony, they're too big of pussies, basically, to try to do anything about it. So we were right the entire time. We knew we were entitled to make these videos. You guys just went and hid in a corner instead of actually face us. So it was a bad look for them, a big win for us. Unfortunately, a loss for that fandom who, very divisive game. It is the last Jedi of games. There are some people that love it and praise it because of the subversion of expectations, and there are other people that despise it for what it did to their characters and their heroes.
Now, in terms of in terms of narrative control and fighting back on narrative control, how have you tried to fight back on all the smears, all the efforts to come after you, all the efforts to demean you, all the efforts to defame you, all the efforts to libel you and others in your space?
That's always tricky because I think one thing we have to understand is it's almost always irrelevant flies, like irrelevant little fleas that, you know what I mean? You might see one and it's annoying, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. But whenever someone's saying something like that about you, feel the need to respond, to bash this person. And sometimes it's valid. Sometimes you should do that. But the vast majority of the time, I think you have to look at these things and the people who are saying it, the fact that they're getting no interaction, that no one takes them seriously. And, sometimes you just kind of have to swallow it and say, all right, this person's irrelevant. I'm just going to make another video. And those terms have lost their meaning in a lot of ways. I talk about that all the time. That I think, 2018 or 2019 may have been the year of the racist, the year where racist lost its meaning. 2020 was definitively year of the transphobe, where the word transphobe completely lost all meaning because you started using it on everyone. If you don't put your pronouns in the bio, you're a transphobe. Right. I think that 2021 made...
Sarah Silverman is calling a transgender Caitlyn Jenner a transphobe. I mean, it has lost all meaning. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Oh, no, 100%. That's exactly right. I think that I don't know what 2021 is going to be, the year of anti-vax, when that doesn't actually mean what you think it means anymore, because that's just getting thrown out all the time from people that have every vaccination known to man except the one they really want you to take so you can take your mask off, So it's these words that they get used by people and they lose their meaning. because you're calling everybody a Yahtzee. You're calling everyone a racist. You're calling everyone a transphobe. And that's kind of the way I've started to approach that stuff. In the beginning, you know, when I had a smaller channel and I would get that because I was attached to a bigger channel. You know, I started my channel at the same time that I get attached to this big channel with a lot of weight in Geeks and Gamers that already had a lot of haters. I already had a lot of people that did not like them. So when I was smaller, I was not used to that. That was strange for me. Now it's a daily occurrence. Now I look through my notifications and there's a bunch of people that are begging for my attention. There's a bunch of people that are bitter that they don't have the following that we do. So they're just going to do everything they can to try to bring us down because they failed in elevating themselves. And some of it comes from people that despise everything you believe in. Some of it comes from people that are jealous. And I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter very much.
I think you might be very on point with the 2021 being the year of the anti-vaxxer, because I actually had a discussion with someone where I had to discuss the fact that I'm not anti-vaxxer and there's no but. And then they said, well, you know, then you should be okay with X, Y, and Z. And I said, well, I'm okay with A, B, C, and here's why I'm not okay with X, Y, and Z. And I said, what, do I have to be okay with all vaccines in order to not be an anti-vaxxer? If I'm against vax, am I an anti-vaxxer? And then they said, yeah, kind of. I was like, oh, okay, then it has officially lost all of its meaning. And if you have to, if it is an all or nothing, and that is what it is, if you have one element of disagreement, you become the white nationalist, you become the Yahtzee, you become the anti-Semite, you become the anti-vax. If one element of disagreement causes you to become the extreme, then the definitions of the extremes no longer have any relevance, have any meaning, and have any force. And that is the danger of just diluting language to the point of meaning nothing, because it gets you some sort of temporary gain on Twitter for that particular day.
That's why these people ultimately will fail, because they will eat themselves alive. They just will. They have no choice. That's their mantra. That is their mantra now. Look at someone like J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling is about as left as they come, except for one issue. She thinks that biological women are biological women, and that biological men are biological men. She supports trans rights. She supports all of these things, but she has one thing that it doesn't align with the mob. And now you got people who align with her on every single thing, burning her books, saying, I'm never going to support this franchise again. And that's ultimately why these people will fail. As long as we continue to speak out and, give some common sense out there for most people to come and realize that there is another side to all of this nonsense. And when it comes to the anti-vax thing, like, you'd think that maybe there could be an asterisk on one that was, rushed through production, basically no research, no long-term research in any way, shape, or form, that, the pharmaceutical companies have no liability for in any way, shape, or form. You'd think that maybe there would be an asterisk for that, but I don't know. That's just me thinking.
No, and I'm thinking, I think out loud and I say, okay, the doctors say, well, you have nothing to fear with this particular vaccine because it just employs technologies, the same science that is in other existing vaccines. So you have nothing to fear. One can be medically right, and I'm not saying that they are or are not. Talk to your doctor to pull a Tim Pool. All I'm saying is, in terms of understanding someone's reluctance, on the one hand, comparing it to polio, and I've said this before, is a different beast altogether just because of the history and track record of polio. Also, probably not the best comparison because of the early track record of polio. But the intellectual dishonesty to say this vaccine is the same as polio, and if you are averse to this, it's as bad as being averse to polio or chickenpox or whatever. It's a form of sleight of hand. But it might very well be totally safe. But to not appreciate people's legitimate concerns is intellectually dishonest and actually only further cements and solidifies those individuals' beliefs, because they are objectively legitimate concerns, even if there is an explanation for them. And by not respecting them and by not acknowledging them, you are demeaning them and therefore in some way reinforcing those very beliefs. Nobody has played a bigger role in creating anti-vaxxers, if that's what we're going to call it, for the COVID vaccine, than Jimmy Kimmel running that stupid ad with having doctors swear at me and tell me I'm an idiot for having questions. Because there are some doctors that still have questions. And you read articles in the newspaper about AstraZeneca and J&J who raise questions after the fact. So nothing creates more vaccine hesitancy than the people who are actually running around calling everyone the hesitants rant over. It's the Streisand effect on every level of it. By doing something, they actually increase the problem that they are complaining about in the first place. I heard a kid scream upstairs. They must agree with me. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, they must be worried about getting a vaccine for something that literally has no chance of affecting them, and that's where it's all at for me. Is I think that for something like this that is literally been overblown the entire time. It's been overblown. I think everybody can see that now. You have these people we're supposed to respect and we're supposed to listen to, like Dr. Fauci, who is literally been wrong all the time. He's consistently changing his opinions on everything. You know,
broken clock. A broken clock is right twice a day.
Man, if he'd stay broken, yeah, but he keeps moving. He keeps moving the hands. Like somebody walks by and moves the hand every once in a while. So he's never right. And there's people we got cults of people who are like making TikTok videos thanking Fauci and saying they want to get the poke for Fauci, and it's nonsensical. And I think to be a little bit hesitant for yourself is fine. Like, you should do your own research, feel the way you feel. You should do that with everything in life. You should never just sit there and believe, especially when they're trying to tell you, hey, get the poke and you get your freedom back that we took away from you. I think everyone should be very, very worried if you are living in a country that is propagating that kind of thing. You have the leaders of the country saying, hey, do it or else. It should be scary for all of us.
And were you always involved, engaged, or curious about politics, or how much did the culture wars translate into more interest in politics because of how much politics was invading the culture wars?
I was really into politics, like getting out of high school, like in that time frame. For me, that was 2006, 2007, end of the Bush era. I was very heavily invested in the Obama-McCain election. And I was like, just straight up like, boom, boom. Like I could have been just like a standard college Republican. That's what it felt like to me at that time. But I was very engaged and invested in it. Since then, I would say that my interest in actual like real politics has waned a little bit, because I see now that people on there's crooks everywhere, there's liars everywhere, there's thieves everywhere. There are two sides of the same coin, and they both want to take away your freedoms. That's how I feel about it now. But I still very much care about all the different ramifications of those things. And I do think in the future, I'm going to probably, delve a little more into that side, as long as YouTube allows us to continue talking about it. But if we don't have YouTube, then there's other platforms like Odyssey. There's other places like Locals, as you guys know. That's one of the reasons I love Locals so much, is because they don't censor you. They don't put COVID warnings on a post, on a meme.
Not just COVID warnings, by the way. For my videos, COVID ads run by the federal government. So in a way, the government is actually it's so crazy. The government's basically running ads on my videos, which are I'm not critical of anything. We just discuss it, but you mentioned the word, the government runs the ad. But Ryan, what I find very funny is we've both found this niche. We've been pushed into this niche of sorts, or led into it, forced into it, in that I wanted to come on and just make fun, on the one hand, fun, stupid videos, drone fishing, drone waxing my legs, whatever. And it got into law. Just wanted to talk about the law, talk about current issues. And then you even by just talking about it in a passive sense, you become the victim of this system that you didn't even know or appreciate existed. And my awakening was with the Alex Jones deposition video. I was like, holy cow, look at this. The video gets demonetized. It gets removed because it violated the terms of use for hate speech. And then I'm a player in it. They forced me into the play by doing this. Then I make a stink of it. Video comes back, fully monetized, back on the platform. But then you realize that I guess it's getting red pilled as you see these forces that you never knew existed. And then you go from what you wanted to do to what they're making you do, which is being not an activist, but an active participant and critic of this system. And I mean, what does it feel like? You wanted to do something fun with games, and now what you can't avoid is the political infusion of partisan SJW, for lack of a better word, ideas. I mean, do you find it depressing, or do you find it liberating to some extent?
It depends on the day and the circumstance, I suppose. I wouldn't say I ever find it depressing, but you are right that even if you didn't really realize you were going to get this invested in it, once it happens to you and you realize that you're just the 1,000th person for it to happen to, you feel like you have this platform, this responsibility to talk about that. You know what I mean? To bring awareness to others, to let everybody know what's going on, what these people are doing. And it's funny you mentioned that, because I recently watched like your 4-year-old video where you caught that bass with the drone. Like that was, dude, it was hilarious. But it was like, 4 years ago, you were doing these fun things on your channel, and the next day, yesterday, you're like talking to Dave Rubin about politics and lockdowns in Canada, like all these things. You know what I mean? So it's crazy how things can evolve. But as we evolve and our interests evolve, and who we're talking to and what they're interested in kind of changes as well. That all affects, what we talk about. As far as me, I would say that, maybe just being so on the internet all the time, maybe once every 2 months, I just kind of have to take a day and not make a video, not do a stream, and just watch sports or watch TV, even if it's bad, even if it's woke sports, whatever it may be, and just kind of chill out for a little bit. But the other 59 days out of those 2 months, I'm pretty ramped up and ready to go. I get a lot of energy and kind of feed off that, at least now. I haven't run into a wall yet on YouTube in 2 years, and I go pretty hard. But for the most part, it really gives me energy. I like the idea of us being in this, for lack of a better term, culture war. I know that phrase gets thrown around a lot, and it has a lot of different meanings. But I think it's pretty easy to see here that is what we're in. That is what we're in. And for me, it's motivating. Every time I gain a subscriber, that's one more person that I feel like I need to, like, I have a responsibility to, that they're subscribing to me. They're watching our videos because they care about what we have to say. And that's impactful and it's humbling. So I stay motivated by the idea that there are people out there that don't want us to speak. It just makes me want to make more videos.
One thing that fascinated me was in this cultural commentary space, overwhelmingly there was an instinctive reaction to all of the lockdown policies, mask mandates, vaccine passports, what I call the white lab coat crowd, and through large parts of our society, including on the political right, people in positions of power, etc. There was deference to that set of authority and deference to their objectives, deference to Fauci. But in the Geeks and Gamers space and in your sort of cultural corollaries, overwhelmingly there was skepticism almost out of the gate. And I was curious, is it part of the tutelage or training that comes up with responding to sort of the cultural elites trying to shove their ideology down everybody's throats and tell them it's great and tell them it's wonderful, and the various sort of smear tactics and censorship tactics to those who raise questions, selective lawfare like copyright strikes? What is it, do you think, that was sort of in the drinking water, so to speak, that gave your fellow creators in your cultural space the ability to see things that it took a lot of people a whole year to come around to, in the sense of being to be skeptical of the white lab coat crowd? One, am I right that was sort of a more common reaction than not? And then secondly, what might you attribute it to?
You're 100% spot on. I think all of us, we have developed this inherent skepticism of authority in general. Now, usually it's not, I would say in our spaces, it's typically not about governmental authority. Typically it's about the authorities, be it the mainstream media, be it the Hollywood elites. Yeah, anyone with a blue check mark, basically, if you have a blue check mark, you need to prove to me you're not a piece of shit. Like that's how I feel at this point. Like blue check marks are like the mark of the beast, honestly, right now. Like if you see one, you're inherently think that they have a certain way of thinking, because Twitter is very much an echo chamber. And so I think that comes naturally for us. So when it's not only the government trying to sit here and take away your freedoms, but when also all the entertainment industry hops right on board to support the government in that, That's where a lot of us, I think, that's like, okay, if these people are aligned on something, it must be really bad. It must not make any sense. For me, back, it was maybe around the turn of the new year for 2020, right around January, I was watching coverage about all of the COVID stuff that was going on in Wuhan before anybody was talking about it here. I was watching, YouTube channels, things like that were covering it and trying to see, because there was not a lot of information coming out of China at that time. And I saw that all going down, and I was like, people aren't talking about it. People are trying to cover up. They're trying to not make it a big deal. I thought it was going to be really bad. And so in January, I went out and I got a bunch of food. I was ordering toilet paper before it was the cool thing to do in March. I got a bunch of toilet paper off Amazon. I bought a bunch of masks because I legitimately thought it was going to be really bad. And then it happens. Turns out not really that bad. If there's anybody who's affected out there, I feel for you. I understand that. But when you look at the grand scheme of things and how it compares to maybe a flu season, at the end of the day, it's not that bad. I don't think it was that big of a deal. I don't think it required all these ridiculous things, these restrictions of our freedoms. But it's funny for me because I went from one side of it to another very quickly. And a lot of that was because of the way that people reacted to it. Not only the data, but the way that certain people changed their tones, the way certain people started behaving. Our culture, like you said, Robert, it is, or our little area here, we are very resistant against these people who feel like they have authority over something. Because let's be real, why should an actor be telling me what to do with my life ever in general? Why should they be telling me who to vote for, what to put in my body, anything? They shouldn't. You know why I care about Robert Downey Jr.? Because he's pretending to be someone else. Like that is why we care about these people. We don't care about the person themselves. We care about who they are pretending to be. I don't need like all those things. Same with athletes. Does anyone care what LeBron James thinks about his interpretation of a police shooting? Go ahead.
Some people care because they should know to derive the exact opposite conclusion from the projected message. But yeah, that's why some would care.
Yeah, and it's so with someone like LeBron James, we have built sports wars on the back of LeBron James saying stupid things. So thank you, LeBron James. We'll be forever in your debt. Thank you for helping us build sports wars. A crying LeBron in the thumbnail is a guarantee for a good video. But this is a guy who says that he needs to stand up for injustice everywhere, even when it's inconvenient. Except when it comes to China, then he shuts up and dribbles when his money is on the line, when it doesn't fit his narrative. This is a guy who says we need to speak out against all this violence, all these black men and women that are getting killed in the streets. Silent about black on black crime in Chicago, in Baltimore, in any of these other places where it's far, far more damaging to a community. The only time he wants to say anything is when a white person shoots a black person, regardless of whether it's justified, regardless of whether it saved another black girl's life. He doesn't care. He is an absolutely hypocritical piece of garbage. But there are some people that look to him as some type of authority for something when we should not. The only thing LeBron James should be an authority on is on the basketball court. That's it. But it seems like these people just want to be so involved in everything. And we become so resistant to that because we've seen it over and over again.
And Robert, it's funny, when we first started doing the consistent streams right at the beginning. And Robert, one of the things I remember you saying is it is odd, rare, unique to see all of these forces, the ones who are in charge, the government, the doctors, policymakers, in unison, in tandem, marching in the same direction. It never happens. And when it does happen, it's never a good thing. And I remember you said it in the beginning, and I can only appreciate these things in hindsight. At the beginning, I was, it's not that I'm denying anything now. It's that we know what this is now. And someone said, 600,000 people have died. STFU. Yes. First of all, nobody's denying the number. We might argue over where these numbers are being attributed in terms of who's being included, what they would have otherwise died in within the same time frame, and how you digest that data. The question is, does forcing face masks on people outdoors in parks actually do anything to reduce that number? Or is that number being exploited politically for reasons that hypothesize on the reason, but is it being exploited to compel what is totally disjointed, unrelated, and corely irrelevant behavior? And that's what I think a lot of people who might have had the reflexive, rebellious nature were asking a lot earlier than others. I think even the middle ground people are coming to that determination now. But that was a long-winded answer of saying a long-winded rant. I'm not exactly sure I was going with that, but I wasn't questioning it as much as you guys seem to have been early on. But I think everyone comes around at some point and says, yeah, it might be deadly among certain demographics. That might not explain why my kids have to wear face masks 8 hours a day at school.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that basically the dividing line was, how deferential are you to authority? And I think there are those that were completely deferential to authority, those who are completely skeptical of authority, and those in between. But what was intriguing to me was that if you had a mindset to be skeptical of authority, particularly in the media space and in the propaganda space and the entertainment space, then you knew to be instinctually skeptical right out of the gate because of what they were trying to propagate, whereas many others did not. I mean, many of the political actors in the political space, the Benji Shapiros of the world, were not on the right page until much later, in part because I think they tend to be much more deferential to authority, at least initially and instinctually, came around, over time as the evidence and data built. Now, what was the inspiration for Sports Wars? Was it because of how much of this culture war is now in the sports space? Is it because it's hard to get sports analysis content outside of Clay Travis and Outkick that isn't just inundated with politics? Or was it something else?
Sports Wars, when I first came on board Geeks and Gamers, I told Jeremy, I know you're like doing Sports Wars. It's not really taking off the ground. I had a couple thousand subscribers, was getting like no views. But I was like, I'm into sports. I'd be willing to help out with that. And that wasn't really going to be the focus when I came on, because it was still a heavy Star Wars based channel and everything. But once I started doing some videos, taking some initiative, we started pounding stuff out. And initially the creation of Sports Wars is because whenever we would talk about sports on the main channel, no one cared. Like it was just not that audience, right? There was a little overlap, but for the most part, people keep talking about Kathleen Kennedy. That's what they wanted to hear, because that's what the channel was built off. It'd be the same thing if you guys started talking about, you started doing I don't know, fast food reviews or something. There'd be a lot of people that'd be like, what are you guys doing? So YouTube wants you to do one thing, so we decided to do sports. We started over there just making normal sports content, quick hitting things that you might see on something like ESPN Fox, just straight up from a very neutral perspective, letting everybody know what happened, things like that. And we realized that one of the reasons people are so tired of the mainstream, not only because the ideological problems, but because it's just the same stuff. It's the same kind of buttoned up thing. And that's not what people want. I think people, when you look at Barstool Sports, they took off because they let their personalities show. They were real. They were funny. They called stuff out. Now, they don't get very political. Very intentionally, they don't get very political. But they're authentic and they're just real. Because that's how most people are. Most people aren't buttoned up and sitting there looking at stats on SportsCenter. Most people are sitting there with a beer in their hand with their buddies, swearing, talking smack, all these things. So that's really what we decided to do there, is really open it up a little bit, let our personalities really show and shine, really start calling out stuff that we thought was ridiculous. And it didn't matter. We've got people of different beliefs. We've got a former professional athlete there who is very ideologically different from us, who has different takes. But everybody really let their personalities show. And we started really calling out the identity politics stuff when it started raising its head, when people started all the kneeling for the anthem. When they started kneeling for the anthem, when Black Lives Matter started to get put on basketball courts, when they started calling off games for career criminals who got shot. When all these things started happening, you heard nothing from the mainstream media. You heard support from the mainstream media for these things. People were starving for common sense, because half your audience does not like that. Half your audience doesn't want to tune in and get told that they're wrong because of the way they voted. So that's a lot of people out there who felt completely abandoned by mainstream sports, and they really started coming to us.
And not just wrong because of who they voted for, wrong because of quite literally who they are and the color of their skin, which is, it's nothing shy of overt racism. And I saw a meme, and someone actually posted in the comment, ask Ryan who radicalized him. And there was this meme I saw, it's like, who radicalized you? And the guy whispers back, you did. And I think it was MSM. You literally have MSM and the powers that be radicalizing the people, telling people that they are bad fundamentally because of immutable traits or because of political preferences, and then asking, who's radicalizing these people to turn away from the people that are radicalizing them. It's either a vicious circle or it's a deliberate one, but it is, you slap this stuff into the faces of people who just wanted the distraction, and then ask why they're turning away and ask why they're getting angry at the fact that you're rubbing their nose in someone else's poop, quite literally. And it's an amazing thing. I mean, you'll never run out of content until they decide and realize that this is not what people ever turn to sports for in the first place.
How embarrassing is it that in a time where you have the entire country locked up, they can't go anywhere? Well, I mean, they can go to every fast food place. They can go to McDonald's. That's, necessary. You can't go to the gym, though. Can't go to the gym to actually improve your immune system and stay physically fit, mentally fit. But you can go to McDonald's in a time where everybody is locked up at home and have nothing to do other than watch sports. Your audience completely tunes out. That's one of those things where we're talking about Disney, Star Wars, how it should have been more than they ended up getting. But that's what sports should have been. The ratings should have taken off, but instead they plummeted to all-time lows. It's a direct effect of exactly what you're talking about. People feeling disenfranchised because they just cannot watch the product anymore because it's not about the product. It's about a narrative. Sports, I think I heard Eric July talking about this the other day, where he said sports used to be this very unifying thing where you go to a sporting event, you'd find somebody, and it doesn't matter who they voted for. It doesn't matter the color of their skin. All that matters is the color of the jersey that they're wearing. Because if they're wearing your team's jersey, you immediately feel a kinship with them, and you might be best friends with that person who's sitting in your row for the next 3 hours when you watch a game. Because that's all that matters. That's why people want that. They want this escapism from everything else. They want to just see this competitive thing going down in front of them. They want to cheer for their team. And that has been taken away from us. And I think the NBA is almost like gone at this point. I don't know if it can get back until you get rid of some of these bad actors like LeBron James. He's so divisive. This is a dude who his rhetoric, in my opinion, his rhetoric led to the attempted execution of 2 sheriff's deputies in Los Angeles. And when the county sheriff asked LeBron James, hey, you've been speaking out about all this stuff. Please, can you give this a signal boost? Please, can you talk about this? Please, can you tell people that this is not right? He was completely silent, never responded to them because he doesn't care about police officers, not in any way, shape, or form. And until people like him are out, I think there's a lot of people that just will not watch anymore, not even to root against him, just because they're that, again, apathetic. That's what a lot of us are getting to these traditional entertainments.
Well, yeah, I mean, LeBron's been impressive. He's made Colin Kaepernick look like a uniter. But I'm just waiting for them to do the fishing channels, and then for them to say, look at that guy catching the brown trout. They want to catch the brown trout and kill the poor little brown, or whatever it is. I mean, however insane you might like Babylon B-ish, you might imagine it becoming. We've witnessed Babylon B become reality repeatedly. I mean, The Onion is now, you can't do irony and satire because it's a true story, a true narrative, a true case. Now, in that capacity, in terms of the community that you guys are building, when did Friday night start?
Oh, Friday Night Tights. That has been something pretty incredible, what we've built over there, what Gary's got going on. That started, I want to say, a little over a year ago, maybe. It started, and I was on there, I think, every 2 weeks at first. We kind of had a little rotating panel before we really figured out who was going to be there. But, Gary wanted to do a weekly stream, wanted to get a bunch of people that were going to be there every week, and then have one or two guests every week to really spice it up. And he was looking for a catchy name, and Friday Night Lights stuck out. I think it may have been him and Jeremy talking about it potentially. I don't know, but Friday Night Tights just really stuck, and everybody knows what time it's going to be on. Well, I mean, it's obviously going to be late because it's Gary running the stream, but everyone knows it's at least going to be Friday at some point. And the community and the passionate fan base that we built up there has been incredible. And, it's a Nerdrotic and a Geeks and Gamers production. So, Gary and Jeremy are obviously a part of it, as from Heel vs. Babyface. Dude is a lightning rod and funny as hell. And you always know that you're going to get an awesome stream when you're with him. Then we've also got I am obviously on there, Comics Division, and Odin, who's also a part of Geeks and Gamers. And then we just get to talk to so many different people. I know you guys had Razor Fist on maybe a week or two ago. I remember you guys had a stream with Razor Fist. We got to talk to Razor Fist on there. Chrissy Mayer, a comedian, was on there. Nick Rekieta we've had on there. Critical Drinker, one of everybody's favorites to ever have on there, Critical Drinker. And just the different people in the different areas. And I know we get criticized a lot of being in an echo chamber. You hear that all the time. Echo chamber, echo chamber, echo chamber. And it's funny because when you look at like all of us who are on that stream, we've all had very different experiences, very different backgrounds. As is from freaking the UK, people lump him into this like conservative liberal, like he's pretty liberal, and he also has no care about American politics at all. But that always gets lumped into the thing. And Friday Night Tights has become something massive because it's just us talking. Sometimes we might only talk about 2 or 3 subjects, but we're just talking for 3 or 4 hours. And people would rather do that than watch a gender swap, race swap remake of something on Netflix.
It's funny. I just wrote it down so that I wouldn't forget. But people accuse me and Robert of having an echo chamber here. And like the thing that goes through my mind is someone whispering to me, "Who put you in this echo chamber?" And me responding back to them, "You did," because anyone who believes in the idea of the echo chamber refuses to come on because they don't want to be associated, even by discourse, with someone with whom they might overtly disagree. They don't even want to associate because it's the same litmus test of, if you espouse one belief I don't like, you are the devil incarnate, as with J.K. Rowling's. If you talk with someone who may have even call it one objectively bad aspect to their personality, you're guilty of all of their sins. And they won't even do that discourse because they know how their own cult, their own following will react to them venturing out to the Viva Fry channel, because Viva Fry had Cernovich on and Viva Fry has Robert Barnes on. And if they associate with them, they're guilty of all of whatever Barnes's and Cernovich's sins are. It's the madness of the tribalist framework that actually exacerbates the tribalism. But and it's what I love about one side. They'll talk with anybody, and the other side will not talk with anybody. And that is how they maintain their, in a way, moral superiority, in a way that just demonizes anyone who thinks differently than them. And they don't realize that until they turn on them.
That's the irony too, is because as that continues to happen, our audience, you guys have seen this, I know you have, our audiences continue to grow and expand with people that don't believe the same way we do, right? But they have a couple shared common values. That might be freedom of expression, right? It can just be that simple to have somebody come into your community and realize that even if they have opinions that don't necessarily align with maybe the majority of the community, they are free to express that without fear of getting excised. So that's the irony of the entire thing, is while they're screaming that we have an echo chamber, we continue to have more people that get pushed out. As you continue to push more people out because they don't align with your values, they come over to our side and they see that, maybe those guys aren't so bad. And it's really backfiring. And again, I think ultimately it is why we will win if we can stay platformed long enough to do so.
That's the big
in that
the big
space.
one.
Are you more on the white pill, red pill, or black pill side as it relates to near and longer term future of culture, in terms of particularly, like in this context, films, television, comics?
But define those pills for those who may not know them, because I got mixed up on one of them.
Okay, so white pill is hopeful, red pill is revolutionary, black pill is you're doomed.
When it comes to traditional entertainment, I guess it depends what aspect you're talking about. If I'm talking about my hopes of all of a sudden mainstream entertainment, Hollywood, all these things being like, you know what? We were wrong. Peasants, we're sorry we treated you like this for so long. I'm black-pilled on that idea. I'm red-pilled on the idea of continuing to push back against it and continue to draw attention to it and get more people to our side of things. And I'm white-pilled, and I think that we are already starting the alternative. Like, that's what this is. That is what this is. It's been going for a long time, and it just continues to grow. And this is, you are seeing the last breaths of traditional mainstream media. We thought, it was newspapers that were dying. That was the first thing. And then everyone was going to online stuff. Now those online spaces are dying because people are going to places that aren't the New York Times, aren't these traditional mainstream outlets, because people don't believe them anymore. They can see how slanted they are. They do not like it. So they're coming to alternatives. And that's what we are. You're seeing, and I don't necessarily agree with everything Ben Shapiro thinks. I don't think you guys do either from past things I've heard. But, like the Daily Wire, when they reached out to Gina Carano and were like, hey, we want you to do this movie. That's the kind of thing I see. And not to say that I want some kind of conservative Hollywood, because I've seen all the Christian Channel movies. That's not what I want. What I want is a space where they're just going to make content and focused on stories instead of just the opposite of Hollywood. I don't think really any of us want that. What we want is something truly that is free of all of that stuff, that's just about entertainment. And I'm white-pilled on that. And I think that more people are going to get pushed out of the bubble because they eat themselves. And more people are going to get pushed over to this kind of alternative space that will continue to grow, especially as people see the success that we all are having on places like YouTube, where we can just speak directly to an audience. So, and that's really a cop-out because I took every pill. I basically just OD'd. But,
someone actually said you're on the rainbow pill in the chat. So that you're...
There you go. That's got different connotations, I think, depending on what we're talking about. But yeah.
What do you think the chances are of for Star Wars, in the sense that there was this brief moment of opportunity shown by the end of Mandalorian? I keep spoiling it, but so I guess I won't spoil it again. But the ending of Mandalorian with Jon Favreau really trying to recreate the old glory of Star Wars. Kathleen Kennedy clearly outraged by that, and so firing Gina Carano. But then a lot of blowback on Disney for firing Gina Carano. Talk that Kathleen Kennedy may be out. What would you say the chances are that the Jon Favreau vision becomes the future vision of Star Wars in the near short term or distant?
I have a little bit different view on things as far as Star Wars and the whole like Kennedy versus Favreau thing. I think that a lot of things that I've heard very much indicate that she's not really involved like that. She's really not ever on set for a lot of these things, because that's not who she is. It's not the fact that she's banned from the Mandalorian set. She's been there, but it's only for certain things. She's someone who hires people to do a job. Often she hires people who think like her, that will do that thing. In the case of Jon Favreau, I think that with everything that had happened with the sequels, they needed a big win. So she went out and got someone who was very, very qualified in Favreau and respected because they needed to get a win. I don't think The Mandalorian is very good. I think it's very average. I think it's very mediocre in terms of storytelling and character development.
Someone asked what your opinion is on Baby Yoda.
I hate Baby Yoda. Oh, I'm trying not to swear too much because I know this is you guys' channel, but I hate Baby Yoda. He's such a gimmick. He's for the soccer moms, and the worst thing is it worked. That's the worst part, is that so many people, despite everything that Star Wars has done to you, fell for this stupid little green puppet that could have been any species of anything, but they wanted it to be Yoda, even though, that was always supposed to be very much mysterious. They wanted it to be Yoda to tug at your heartstrings, because that's all that Disney Star Wars is at this point. It's not, there's no substance to it. And for me, the end of Mandalorian, it didn't give me that same feeling it gave a lot of people with that return to me. If that person returned, they would have done a lot more than just ask for Baby Yoda. Maybe they would have asked the question, what are all these Imperials doing here? They're not supposed to be here. Do they have any more of these droids? What the heck were those things? Are you guys okay? Can you get off this ship? What are you doing here? Instead of just very somberly grabbing a child and leaving. It was so dumb, to be honest with you.
I have no idea what you guys are talking about. All that I know is that when I saw the image of Baby Yoda, I thought it was a joke meme. So I have no idea it was actually part of anything real, which shows my level of ignorance on these things.
It's all right.
Ryan, the one question I always ask, I don't always ask, and I've asked it 3 times. Your favorite and most infuriating issue that you've covered in the 2 years you've been doing this, if you had to pick one or if you had to pick 3, what would they be? The things that have infuriated you the most, or the things that you have loved addressing the most?
So the things that I have loved the most, I suppose, would be when we have any kind of like victory against the man or cancel culture. You know, things like, this is a little bit smaller one, but like Gina Carano's Bear Grylls episode getting reinstated. You know, like things like that are good when it's very clear that we have had an impact, that the fans making noise, that us making videos and getting it out there in the public, that is, you know, that it has had an effect. And really the entire Gina Carano situation, although she lost her job, like she was a martyr. Like the fact that you go to the Star Wars YouTube channel right now and it's just full of comments with quotes from her and all these massive downvotes and everything, like it strangely feels good, because it feels like it's not just a niche group of people who don't like these movies. They just don't like women. No, it's not that. We're supporting a strong woman. It's Disney that fired her, you know. And when you have moments like that, it feels really good, because it feels like you're actually having an impact. The other one, and this is kind of a smaller one, but really big for me. I'm a huge fan. One of the reasons I started my channel is to talk about the Star Wars expanded universe for people that had no idea what it was. Because I know not everybody reads books, because either you didn't want to, you didn't have access to them, you didn't know about them, whatever it may be. And for me, getting a lot of people to pick up these books for the first time and realize that this is a much more true to Star Wars. This is Star Wars. Like, it's what it should have been. This is what they should have based all these movies off of. So recently, this is hilarious. A bootleg copy. I have it right here. This is called Heart of the Jedi. This is a bootleg fan-made copy that got put up on Amazon, not authorized by Lucasfilm. It was supposed to be released in 1993. Some things happened. It never saw the light of day. Resurfaced back in like 2015 or 16. Someone did the final editing touches, put it up as a free PDF somewhere. This book got randomly put up on Amazon by a mysterious person. We don't know who it was, on like the 30th of April. It outsold all Disney Star Wars books on May the 4th. This huge day for Star Wars, when they pretend like it's Star Wars Day, even though we all know it's May 25th. When they pretend like it's Star Wars Day, and they do all this promotional stuff. This bootleg copy of a 30-year-old book with no promotion outsold Disney Star Wars. And like things like that, that's what is fun for me, and that makes it feel good for me to see that so many other people are getting enjoyment from that and sticking it to these corporations in a way. Now, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I was going to someone in the chat was asking, and this, I don't know where this question goes. Your opinion about somehow women in the 60s.
So I think that actually, that might be what the person emailing you was talking about. Ask for Ryan's thoughts about women. So this started on Friday Night Tights. This is a meme from Friday Night Tights. And this may be one of the reasons all those misogynist comments, you know, always continue to come out. But to me, I don't really understand. This is obviously, you know, a joke that we run on Friday Night Tights. I don't really understand why so many women complain about how it was in the 50s and 60s, when they, you know, they didn't have to go to work. They didn't have to have a career, none of this stuff. You really only had 2 responsibilities. You had to cook and get fucked. You know, that was basically your responsibilities as a woman in the 50s and 60s. So to me, that sounds like the life. I would do that in a heartbeat. But no, you wanted third wave feminism. You wanted to say screw all men. You wanted to get out of the house, and you're reaping what you sow. So that is the meme from Friday Night Tights, and I'm sure that'll get clipped, and I'm sure there'll be more hit pieces.
You do appreciate that will get clipped, that will get hit pieces, and that is a hyperbolic way of framing something that a lot of people are going to disagree with, especially, Ryan, do I venture a guess that you don't have kids?
I do, actually. I have 3 boys, yeah.
Oh my goodness!
So-
Well, there goes me eating my big foot.
all right.
You have 3 kids, man. Okay, well, well played.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's you know that's gonna. Here's the thing: at one point in time, edgy comments that people know would be offensive to some and entertaining to others, on the one hand, was humor. At one point, it was actual stand-up comic. It was sort of the insightful, arguably sometimes oversimplified, sometimes misrepresented realities, but it was comedy at one point, and now it is only a source of attacking for the purposes of cancellation and demonizing and unpersoning. So, when you say something like that, the risks are increased by, about 1,500%. So now I think I might understand what someone meant asking his views on women.
Yes. It's somebody asked the question of who radicalized you. That's another meme. So there was this podcast from a couple miserable ladies who decided to write this 70-minute long article with a bunch of falsehoods. They pretended like they collected data and out all these graphs that if you have a room temperature IQ, you might actually think that a lot of research was done and it's a well thought out article. It's not. It's all complete garbage. Their methodology was completely off base. A lot of their factual statements are not, and it's very, very easy to disprove. But they put out this video that was essentially centered on me. It was this 2-minute video with myself and Geeks and Gamers was in there. The Quartering was in there. Like all these people with these little snippets of couple clips talking about Star Wars, talking about diversity and representation, all these things. And it took my very first video that I ever did, where I was very, I was a little more soft spoken. I was not sure of myself in front of a camera, anything. We've all been there. They took that video and clipped it together with other people saying things, and then having me throughout my YouTube career getting more and more aggressive or confident. And the beard was growing out, and like it literally, it was well done. Unlike the article, this video was well done. It looked like a propaganda piece of how I became radicalized. And that's what these people do. Yeah, they will run with the narrative. We had people at Lucasfilm retweeting this video, retweeting this article, because they know who we are and they despise us. And that should be very pathetic for arguably the biggest IP in the world to be scared to death of someone in the spare room of their house talking, with a $150 microphone and a $75 webcam. That's pathetic. If that's where you're at, that you are scared of a bunch of YouTubers, that you feel the need to continue to push that garbage, that propaganda out there. That's the Ryan was radicalized meme. In reality, I think I'm the one doing the radicalization. I think they took a little bit away from me, but that's just my personal thoughts.
And I've not faced the accusations to the same degree, but at first it was all lighthearted stuff, and now we're talking about serious stuff. And I swear to you, I haven't changed. It's the world around me that has gotten progressively crazier, such that being in the middle changes when everything around you shifts. And first of all, the term radicalization itself has been one of those words that has been abused to the point of meaning nothing. People evolve, people learn, and people discover. Was I aware of the degree of political censorship on YouTube when I first started this? Heck no. I never thought it would affect me because I don't make edgy jokes, Ryan. I don't judge them. I can like them. Even if I don't like the jokes, I can laugh at something that I find offensive. But the world has shifted such that people who might not have modified themselves or changed all that much become radicalized in comparison to the way the world itself, or at the very least the forces that are controlling things, have themselves become radicalized. I think I take it the other way. Hollywood has become radicalized. Politics has become radicalized, and sports have become radicalized, such that the middle ground, reasonable people themselves look like they've been radicalized by comparison because they really haven't moved all that far.
Oh, 100% agree. And there's no doubt that the Overton window has shifted so far. And like, I think that the media has this idea of where the Overton window is. The Hollywood elites have this idea of where it's at versus where in reality it actually is, much more towards the center. Because like you said, I don't think people in general, have changed that much over the past couple of years. It is the way that the message is getting there. The fact that Twitter is so looked at. No one uses Twitter. Like, we're on there, but no one uses Twitter. At 18% of US adults use Twitter, and it primarily skews very heavily where 10% of the tweets, 80% of the tweets are from 10% of the users. Those users skew very heavily to the left and very heavily young and female. So it's not a representation of actual reality. And for companies to, I feel like, really set policy and program and all these things based off appealing to this Twitter audience that is not their real audience, it's a fallacy, and that it's going to continue to backfire on them.
Now, I'd be curious. So, as it relates to your own kids, in terms of what culture you're going to let them have access to, because one thing that's intriguing to me is, people that were sort of mocked in my community growing up were independent Baptist evangelicals of certain types who had begun in the late 70s, early 80s with the homeschooling movement and essentially cultural insulation from what they saw as a culture war that was already waging. And we're just now experiencing the second wave of it that's much broader, much wider, much deeper than just being anti or antithetical to the evangelical or other Orthodox faiths. To what degree? But now, my Gen X and millennial parent friends are talking about the same kind of components at some level, whether it's intentional communities, whether it's some form of homeschooling or private schooling of a different kind or type that they self-create, whether it's keeping their kids off of the kid version of YouTube, whether it's not letting them have social media access until they're 18, why? Because they've seen how detrimental it's been to the generation right in front of them or to their own peers. What is how do you handle that yourself with your own kids in terms of what culture? And others, they make sure they see certain culture. Make sure that they see, watch what was really great films or great books. The old canons, the old structure. Well, how are you approaching that with your own kids?
It's tough. It's a challenge. It really is. And for me, like when I was in school, like the idea of someone like being like one of those weirdo homeschool kids, that's crazy. Now it's like. It almost seems like you feel ashamed if you put your kid in public school because of what's going on right now. And, obviously, depending on your situation, not everybody can homeschool their kids. A lot of people are working. A lot of people are doing things like that. But for me, this was the first year of homeschooling for one of them because this digital learning crap it's nothing. Like these teachers that are not prepared to teach classes on Zoom, that the classes aren't worth anything anyway. You want to talk about no child left behind. Every child gets left behind in this digital learning landscape. One thing that has not been addressed well enough, and that finally places like Texas and Florida are just saying everyone's back. It's normal. Everyone's back to school. Thank God for people like Ron DeSantis for pushing that. One of the things that we have not dealt with that we will soon is the fact that you have an entire generation of kids who basically didn't go to school this year. That's going to be so detrimental to their development. It's an
amazing thing. I've been saying this. They've been going to school digitally. The criteria, the standards for what would otherwise be actual education, it's effectively become nothing. It's become just to do it on paper so that you can say to the parents, "Here's why we're still charging you stuff at school." And for the really, really attentive students who will succeed no matter what, fine. For everyone else, any kid who's remotely a kid that can't focus on a freaking computer for 4 hours, it's worse than no school, because at the very least, I tell you, I'd be taking the kids out and teaching them about amphibians and whatever outside. It's worse than nothing, and they still have to make them look like they're passing. I don't know, it's not measured in health, but this is going to be reflected somewhere down the line. And it's going to be for another future government to apologize for the disastrous effects of this, because at the time they made a decision that the consequences of which they couldn't calculate at the time, but they knew were inevitable at the time.
Yeah, it's a massive problem, and if you don't have kids, you might not understand like why that is, and like seeing your kid who was way ahead in the last year, all of a sudden they're not learning anything. And it's incredibly frustrating. But as far as like the whole cultural thing, I think that at some level they're going to kind of do what they're drawn to. You just have to continue to keep an eye on them. And the idea of not letting kids be in front of a screen, or like limit their screen time. I don't know how realistic that is anymore. I can't limit my screen time. I know that. So, I think that's part of everything now. But one thing that I luckily don't have to worry about is my kids might spend an hour sitting there in front of the Nintendo Switch playing Minecraft, whatever they're playing. But they also, at the same time, they'll just put it down, they'll play outside for an hour with nothing, just with sticks, pretending they're pirates, like whatever it may be. They'll go across the street to the neighbor's house and do the same thing there. And I think that, especially with the lack of school, you got to get the socialization. Because if they're not, and I'm sure that people who did homeschool their kids had to do this all anyway. I just wasn't really aware of it. But that socialization is the biggest part that I think a lot of kids are missing. They're sitting at home with their mom while their mom's in their pajamas all day. Like that's what's going on for a lot of kids. And it's just not good for their development.
No, and they're becoming effectively dependent on devices for any form of human communication. And all of these idiotic, inconsequential tiffs on social media, which you would otherwise shrug off and go out and play with your friends, become the focal points of their existence and become the actual source of strife and discord among friends, and get blown so out of proportion that the psychological harm that has, that reflects itself in ways we're seeing. But again, harder to measure than testing someone who just passed away and attributing a cause of death, notwithstanding other things that might have brought about the same outcome. It's disastrous, and we're only going to see it in a generation's time. And the kids are going to grow up to hate adults, hate their parents, and resent everyone around them who contributed to what is only going to materialize in a generation. My prediction, unfortunately.
And Ryan, how did you explain the lockdown to your kids, and how they handled it?
For the first time, we just called it the virus. I think that's what we called it initially, right? Because it's like, why do we have to wear masks when we go to Walmart? Like, why is everyone doing this? It's like, there's a virus out there, but I explained it the same way I felt about it. I said, there's literally no chance for you to get hurt. There's no reason for you to worry. It's just something that people are freaking out about that we have to do for right now. That's what I said. Like, ironically, I just told them the truth. You know what I mean? That people are just freaking out, but there's literally nothing for you to worry about. And there's not. For kids, there's just not. And in the beginning, it was so different when this first came out, and you got, again, Fauci out there who, once I saw him throw out a first pitch at a Nationals game, I said right there, I don't trust that man. I don't trust a man who throws a baseball like that. All right. That should have been everyone's realization that you cannot, I don't care if he's 90 years old. If you throw a baseball like that, I'm not going to take your opinion on anything. But when it was, what was it? 6 weeks to slow the spread, whatever it was initially, I think 2 weeks to slow the spread. Flatten the curve. I think you can get everybody on board for that. And everybody was on board. They were like, you know what? We're going to make it fun. We're going to stay at home. We'll do this because, it's not that bad. This has been now damn near a year and a half of this garbage. And just finally, this person is finally admitting that, it's all political theater, just so you know. The kids luckily just kind of rolled with it, and they didn't care too much. But I'm sure for some kids, and depending on the household, and depending if their parents are freaking out over it, if their parents are one of these cultists, I'm sure they're very screwed up. To them, this is now going to be normal behavior. These kids might be legitimately scared of leaving their house, as opposed to having a parent like me who's basically saying, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Everyone's freaking out. Don't worry. Just put a mask on when we go to Walmart.
Now, are you raising your kids as Chicago Bears fans?
I'm trying to. They're in Little League, so one of them is not at all interested in it, but I'm making him do it because that's what you have to do. At least try it. The other one is into it, so he's starting to watch more baseball with me. I'm trying to make him a Cubs fan. So it's hopefully it'll work out. If it turns out that I have no fellow sports fans, I'm going to be very disappointed and find someone to blame. I don't know who, but
as a Packer fan from Wisconsin Law School, and Reggie White and Brett Favre, how do you prepare your kids for the depression of losing every year?
Well, you know, I would have to worry about that, but now Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to play for you guys anymore. So I'm not going to have to do that this year, which is very, very nice. I respect Aaron Rodgers, but I absolutely despise him. I don't want to see him anymore. That ridiculous when Julius Peppers ran past him and he threw that touchdown pass on 4th and 10 to Randall Cobb for like 40 yards to beat Cutler and the Bears. That was like the most heartbreaking moment I've had in maybe the last 10 years, I guess, as a Bears fan. You know, there's a lot of other ones that I could go back, but yeah, it doesn't matter. That's the thing about Chicago fans. We're used to being disappointed. You take Justin Fields, you move up to number 11 and take Justin Fields. I'm not going to get excited. I'm not even cautiously optimistic. I'm just saying, we'll see. Got Andy Dalton, Nick Foles, and Justin Fields. Put them together, maybe it's a good quarterback. But yeah, it's a tough life. I have my 2016 Chicago Cubs World Series championship. No one can ever take that away from me. I did not have to wait 108 years for it like so many others did, but I did wait my entire life. So that was the most incredible night of my life, that 10th inning game against the Cleveland Indians. No one can ever take it away from me. I'll be talking about it to the day I die. But yeah, I'm a pretty miserable Chicago sports fan.
The chat seems to have gotten seems to be excited about something, and I'm going to make sure not to bring up anything by accident while we continue this. Ryan, I saw one video that I was going through your stuff, most popular, oldest, but it's relatively new, your oldest stuff. The one I think I loved the most was, do we call it a takedown or an addressing? It was Anita Sarkeesian complaining about the boob things in the Star Wars.
The boob armor.
The boob armor. Now, again, all of this is new to me, especially since I was, picturing Joan Rivers in Spaceballs saying boob armor has existed for a long time. What led to this? How do you get across? I mean, well, I guess first question is, how do you pick your material for the day? Is it whatever you find the most irritating for the day? And then explain this one because it was hilarious, the breakdown and the takedown.
So it just kind of depends. There'll be days where I make 3 videos. There'll be days where I make 1, just because sometimes there's stuff to talk about and I never really want to sit there and hunt for content. But obviously, I get on Twitter, I get on a couple sites that I frequent, and I'll kind of troll through there a little bit. And I'll just search through my YouTube feed because if someone found something, it's like a great thing to talk about. I'm going to make something about that too. I think we get criticized by, I don't think it's a lot of people, but sometimes people are like, oh, everyone talks about the same thing. And it's like, yeah, there's not just one video out there on YouTube about what LeBron James said. It's everybody else talking about that and giving their opinions and breakdowns, So yeah, sometimes I'll check through and see Yellow Flash made a video about some ridiculous thing. And I'm like, oh, that is hilarious. I'm going to talk about that too. Anita Sarkeesian is she is so despised by so many people and she's such a joke to so many people. And seemingly every time she opens her mouth, it's just with a really bad opinion. And she talked about Mandalorians and how the females had armor that was form-fitting. And it's funny because they're literally doing that in our current day militaries. They're making body armor specifically to fit females better because there's more females than ever before, actually in combat zones and things like that. It's something that has happened before. Not often, because again, you go back to 1200 or 1100. Weren't a whole lot of women out there in combat zones, but there were a few, and some of them had form-fitting armor that was custom made. Not very many. The idea that she takes that in a TV show that a lot of people are enjoying in The Mandalorian. I gave my opinions. Not a huge fan of it in general, but a lot of people are enjoying it. And you pick this little tiny thing that you're completely wrong about that was barely form-fitting. It was just enough to show you that it was a woman underneath there. That's it. And you try to make a big deal about it. Then you get destroyed. You get absolutely ratioed. Everybody calls you out, all of these things. And then you continue to double and double down because Anita Sarkeesian is a professional victim. That's what she has been from the very start. She is grifted by being a victim. Very little people have respect for that. But if that's the way you make your living, then that's the only choice you have to continue to be a victim. That's why Colin Kaepernick has continued to sabotage his attempts to get back in the NFL, because he knows it's better for him as a professional victim. And so Anita Sarkeesian is an easy target, but nonetheless, she makes herself available to target very often. And so that was just...
Oh, yeah. Well, that's one of the fascinating things to me about the whole Kaepernick thing was just the degree of denial in that world and fiction and fabrication that we see, whether it's, aspects of BLM and LeBron James, whether it's aspects of popular culture, pretending that people don't like the Star Wars the Disney trilogy because they hate women rather than they just dislike canon destroying bad entertainment. But the same thing in that context of that what is being liked or sought or enjoyed is just either traditional, as cultural, or as socially appropriate. But in the Colin Kaepernick context, as an illustration, he can't hit the right side of a barn. I mean, he decided to become a political, Black Panther raise the fist champion right at the time he was going to get cut anyway, because without Harbaugh around to salvage and save and manage his career, a career that was complete crap prior to Harbaugh's arrival, people had figured out what Harbaugh was doing, and they could scheme defensively. I mean, he had statistically, by a range of metrics that I use, he was the worst quarterback in the league by a long mile. The guy cannot hit the right side of a barn by staying in the pocket, and you can only do so much of the little. He was never Michael Vick level in his abilities to where you could get away with certain limitations in your passing ability. You're already seeing with the Ravens quarterback.
Yes.
And he's fantastic. I mean, he's way above what Kaepernick ever could have imagined being. And even defenses are starting to figure out his limitations and dramatically limit it. The ability to pull that offense off in the NFL, there's just no evidence it's sustainable past a few years. The only guy to get close to doing it was Vic. And again, Vic was a freak at multiple levels. Could do, and he was always a better passer than Kaepernick by a long mile. Kaepernick stunk at Nevada most of his career. Lower level passing ability.
Kaepernick, and I said this from the beginning, and I have these knockdown, dragged out arguments with Jeremy over on Sports Wars about Tim Tebow, because as much as I like and appreciate Tim Tebow as a human being,
he can't throw the ball.
That type of play is not sustainable. Right. We've seen it over and over again. And the idea that you moved off him to go to Peyton Manning, I think was a pretty smart move. That's a Sports Wars argument that I'm sure me and Jeremy will recreate on Sunday and argue for fucking 30 minutes about it. But anyway,
Peyton Manning is a near god. There's no such thing as having too few statues to Peyton Manning. I'm from Tennessee, so
in the regular season, yeah, he's a regular season god.
That's a near sin. That's almost a venal sin.
He's a regular season god. Postseason, he's mortal. We'll just put it that way.
2 Super Bowls. He has 2 of them, 2 different teams. One of the only quarterbacks in the NFL history to have it.
Brock Osweiler performed better on that Denver Broncos team. That last one.
Oh, that's a sin. That's a definite sin. Hey, I'm just saying. Have to send you a baby Yoda for Christmas.
Oh my God! I'm just saying. I'm speaking truth. That's all I can do is speak the truth. But back to Kaepernick. He has had opportunities, and I do think that he could be a backup somewhere, like he could have been. I don't know if he could be now because he's been out for so long, but I do think he's a better quarterback than some quarterbacks that are in the league. But just like with everything, you have to weigh all the factors. You really think Miami's going to sign him after he supports Fidel Castro with the huge Cuban export community they have there? I don't think so. Probably not. Do you really think that Baltimore is going to sign him after his wife says, or his girlfriend, whoever the heck she is, says some ridiculous things about the people working in the Ravens organizations? Probably not. And he even has this opportunity. Gets all these NFL teams to come down to Atlanta and see him play. He decides to make a mockery of it, move it to a high school, make it a commercial for Nike, make everybody alter their plans. And they didn't look that good. And then he tries to say the reason some people didn't come out here is because they don't want to support me. They want to blackball me. No, you're trying to be a victim because it is more profitable for you than showing that you did not. Yeah, politics ruin everything. It proves that if you were to go out there and actually try, it would show that the reason you're not on the field is because of you, not because anyone's holding you back. Same thing with Anita Sarkeesian. She has the same mindset where she is required to find ways that she has been victimized in order to maintain her relevance.
It's an amazing thing. It illustrates, I don't know if the word is cognitive dissonance or confirmation bias. Ryan, you're accused of being anti-woman. You make a joke that some people are going to find to be offensive towards women in the 60s. At the same time, simultaneously, you're among the other, among the few who are vocally defending Gina Carano, a woman who was mistreated by men in an industry because of political beliefs, arguably an actual victim of whatever it is that people who purport to be women's defenders are fighting against, and silent on that issue. So, and in order to reconcile these two mutually incompatible thoughts, they have to rationalize how it is you're defending a woman in one case with the fact that they think you are anti-woman in general. And it's the cognitive dissonance of trying to establish rules, sweeping rules, without the nuance of issue, without the nuance of individuals, and without the nuance of specifics to each circumstance. But it's there was no point to that. Just my observation is how the innate hypocrisy and intellectual incongruity behind saying you're anti-woman on the one case, but when you defend a woman in another case, there's another reason for it, and you're still anti-woman.
It's the complete internal inconsistency with these people. So the same individuals right now, the same individuals who are accusing Gina Carano of being anti-Semitic for what she said, are the ones that are blasting Gal Gadot for a very neutral statement about what's going on between Israel and Palestine. Like, the same people on one hand are saying Gina Carano is an anti-Semite. How dare she say something like that? And then they're saying, well, Gal Gadot, it's disgusting what she's saying. It's all because of her country of origin. Like, that's where these people's heads are at. And it's again, this is why they will eat themselves. This is why what they're doing is not sustainable. And we will win in one way or the other in the long term, whether that's finally changing the way that things are going or whether it's creating something completely alternative for people to come to and enjoy.
Yeah. And maybe a sort of a wrap-up question. Any particular TV series or film that you're watching now or that you're looking forward to coming out this year on the sort of white pill side of the equation? Man,
there is not a lot of mainstream stuff that I'm excited for. I'd like traditional streaming services. There's just not. I think that one kind of series that a lot of people are enjoying right now is Superman and Lois on CW of all things. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but I do see why people are liking it, because for now it looks like a family story with Superman and Lois and their two kids. Some people are liking that. I think that's crazy that we're getting that. I think it's a trick. I think it's a trap. It's CW. We know it's CW. They're eventually going to cuck Superman. That's just how it is. But honestly, right now, all of these things are just being destroyed. Someone said Top Gun 2 in the chat. Yeah, Top Gun 2. I think that'll be interesting. I think that'll be interesting from Tom Cruise. I think Tom Cruise is a guy who is the stuff he's in continues to be I think he's kind of considered a joke by a lot of people because of the Scientology stuff, because of everything. But I think what he's actually producing, putting out there, as far as the last several Mission Impossible movies and things like that, I think they're good, entertaining movies that don't really delve too much into identity politics. So yeah, Top Gun 2, I think that's something we can be excited for. I've heard, I haven't watched it yet, but I've heard that there was an Amazon Prime series that's a kind of like a Western anime that people really loved and really enjoyed. I can't specifically speak to that, but I don't know. I don't have a lot of hope for anything. I think Witcher season 2 is going to be really bad. It's going to be really bad. Henry Cavill's already warned us that it's just going to be terrible. It was already not about The Witcher, and now it's just even more about the women in the series. So it's not a white pill. I'm sorry. All I got is black pills for that.
So people are saying Invincible. I don't know what that is.
That's it. That's the one I was talking on Amazon Prime. Invincible. People are saying they really, really enjoyed it. It's on my list of things to watch. So hopefully I can get to it soon. Everybody loves anime right now. Anime seems to be what a lot of people are going towards as one last bastion. I haven't done too much of it, but.
So I think there was a question about futai, and I think I know what that means now. So I may be mispronouncing it. Someone asked, when is Barnes going to ask about futai?
Oh yeah, that's a Nick Rekieta question for Nick Rekieta.
I believe that's some sort of strange sexual anime hentai thing, if I had to guess.
Yes, that it is.
Ryan, you pretend not to know what it is very suspiciously. I'm totally joking, by the way. This came up, I don't remember when it came up, Robert. I had to look it up, and then my browsing history is, my credit score just went down. I would say someone told me to watch Chernobyl today. I guess that is the ultimate black pill. The Chernobyl, the series, was apparently very good. Ryan, let's just see. Okay, we'll wind it up, keep it to 2 hours. I said we'd limit it to that. Where can people find you? What can they expect next from you? And what do you want to share with the world for parting words?
Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me on. I think it's really interesting. Like, I watch you guys for like your legal stuff, because I have no idea what you're talking about. I want to understand more. One of the same reasons I watch Nick and the things he talks about. So thank you guys for having me on this. It's always interesting when you get the different thoughts and different perspectives, and you guys different experiences, and you guys get to talk about pop culture as well in these sidebars. For myself, obviously you can find me at my YouTube channel, Ryan Kinel RK Outpost. I do have a live channel and a gaming channel as well. I am on Locals, rkoutpost.locals.com. geeksandgamers.locals.com. I want to plug both those things, because as much as I am me and RK Outpost, I am also very much representative of Geeks and Gamers as a whole. And what we're doing over there, all these different avenues we're delving into, whether it's games, whether it's Jeremy's personal channels, is pretty heavy politics. That's also part of the Geeks and Gamers network. Sports, video games, outdoor stuff that we're about to do. Anime, we're getting into anime as well. Geeks and Gamers is going to continue to grow, and we really want people to be a part of that, both on my locals and especially Geeks and Gamers local. So that's my big plugs. You can also find me on Twitch, Instagram, Twitter, all that other nonsense. But in Odyssey, definitely follow over on Odyssey as well, because you never know what YouTube's going to do. And Odyssey is a platform that supports free speech, and it's very easy to mirror all my stuff over there. What I have going on next, I have no idea. I'll have to sit down and figure out what I'm going to make a video about tonight. But basically, I'm just going to keep the grind and keep beating the drum in this cultural war that we have going on.
Amazing. Now you can hear the dog barking. The dog's a timer. The dog's an actual timer, and it comes with poop or pee. It depends where he's at. Ryan, thank you very much for coming. Stick around. We'll say our proper goodbyes afterwards. Robert, this was great. This was Robert's suggestion based on crowd recommendation. So amazing stuff. Stick around, everyone. For next week, we have another good sidebar. I suspect everyone knows where to find you now, but check them out. And thank you. See you all Sunday.